Everyone knows what time of year it is. It's Thanksgiving. It's the holidays. But there's one thing that trumps it all. And that is JFK getting his fucking head blown up like a watermelon. And this is part one of that series. Welcome, everyone, to the new, fun episode of Drunken Jurors of this beginning of the three-part series that I announced in the little intro blooper thing that we do. So we are finally doing the JFK series and his assassination and the conspiracies and Lee Harvey Oswald and everything that goes into it, but summed up because we don't have a year and a half to do an entire series on this bullshit.
Oh, yeah.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Adam.
I'm Nick.
Today I'm drinking because of the Soviet Union and the role they play in this. I'm drinking vodka and Propel.
Oh, God.
Because I'm healthy.
Oh,
I'm drinking Truly Strawberry Lemonade, and when I finish this can, I'm gonna have to go find something else in my fridge. I don't know what yet.
I'm drinking.
Did you not bring alcohol for this fucking series? I swear to God.
The tried and true favorite of the past 6 months. Not 6 months, more like 3. Jefferson's.
Nick, do you have your
The tried and
bottle?
true favorite of now and the future.
And the future. Yeah,
Nick, do you have your infinity bottle?
I do.
I say halfway through this episode, we do a drink of our infinity bottles to see where they're sitting.
All right.
See how
I do need to pour this in, so I'm gonna go grab mine real quick.
The Drunken Jurors episode, we're going to talk about JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald, and then the assassination. Part 2, which will be our normal podcast, we're going to do a conspiracy theory episode where we're going to talk about a bunch of different conspiracies, or not a whole lot of them. We don't know. We haven't recorded it yet. And we don't know how much we're going to get into each one. But we're going to be talking conspiracies. Part 3, Jury of Drunken Opinion. Jack Ruby, the man who kills the assassinator. Part 1, here we go. Let's get into it. Nick, let's start her off.
All right.
Smack her around. Don't do that. That's bad. Don't smack women around.
So ill prepared for this as I type JFK into my browser.
Did you take your notes on the interwebs? Did you just rewrite his Wikipedia article into your...
No, I did actually listen. Hold on, I'll give you my source.
Oh, yeah, fuck. We got to do sources.
I read a bunch of newspapers and a Time magazine from when he got assassinated. Not very helpful.
Cool.
No?
So you need to say whose newspapers they were.
Well, not big newspapers. Time
Not
magazine. Time
okay.
magazine and some bullshit newspapers from Earlville.
You
Illinois.
do not understand how
sourcing
works. My sources were Case Closed, Lee Harvey Oswald and the Assassination of JFK by Gerald Posner. Very good book, very in-depth. It's also the same exact one that last podcast for your left used as their source for their JFK and Lee Harvey Oswald series that I didn't know until after I was halfway through the book.
God damn it.
I wasn't done. I also used JFK's Last 100 Days, The Transformation of a Man and the Emergence of a Great President by Thurston Clark. That is it.
I also
That's his
watched
name.
11/22/63, the Stephen King novel turned into a miniseries with James Franco on Hulu.
Why do you do this?
It's historically accurate, minus
Is
the
it?
time travel.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
You haven't, if you've never read the book or seen the show, you have no room to speak on this accuracy.
I don't like him. I listened to An Unfinished Life by Robert Dalick.
Whose life was unfinished?
Mine, hopefully.
Huh.
So yeah, this was just a broad, overarching. His father, him, got into his brothers, got into his politics a little bit. So John Fitzgerald Kennedy was born May 29th, 1917. He was the 35th president of the United States. He was a U.S. senator for Massachusetts. He was a U.S. rep in Massachusetts. He was, I think, his father was Joseph P. Kennedy Sr., and his mother was Rose Fitzgerald. They were two Irish they weren't Irish immigrants, but they were Irish Americans who had really bought into the American dream. His father became like a union guy and the other shit. He was a big union guy in Massachusetts. I listened to the book like 2 months ago.
We're over here. We're just here spitting facts for you all.
We're starting this off well.
Yeah. His father's not important other than his anti-Semitism.
Yes.
And the fact that he essentially bought his rep seat. But
haven't they all?
Yeah, right. I mean, hey, only one president in the history of America has won 110% of the votes in Chicago.
It's true.
Yeah, and that is John F. Kennedy. So he was originally in the U.S. Navy. He got some fame for having his PT boat, which is like a little mini
PT 109.
Yep, a mini anti-submarine patrol boat that he got sunk because he was actually even bad at being a naval officer.
Yeah, and then he was stranded for a while.
Yeah.
He was rescued exactly August 7th, 1943 is when he was rescued after it happened. He actually had a replica in the Oval Office of PT 109, and he wore a tie clip that was shaped like a torpedo that was on PT 109.
I don't remember what circumstances brought it, but like he was almost on the USS Indianapolis when it sunk. Like he was like almost on it by like a couple days. I don't remember what the exact circumstances were. I think like if his PT boat didn't go down, he was scheduled to like be on the Indianapolis like a couple days, but it went down and he was stranded instead of being on it.
For those of you who don't know what the Indianapolis is, it's a World War II boat in the Pacific that got shot by a Japanese submarine and it sank, and then pretty much everyone except for like there was like 100 survivors out of like the 500 people on it or something. They were stranded at sea for a long ass time. The US government just ignored all the pleas for help. It's something we've been looking into doing possibly at some point. So
I think the last podcast just did one a couple months ago.
They did. Because for some reason, anytime I wanted to do something, they decided to do it right beforehand.
He was awarded the Purple Heart, World War II Victory Medal, American Defense Service Medal, Asian Pacific Camp, basically all your standard medals except for the Purple Heart. And then he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives in 1947 for the 11th Congressional District of Massachusetts, so Boston. So one thing I'll get into about his father. His father was very much, I am an American, I am not Irish. And then later in his life, him and his sister Kathleen?
I couldn't tell you.
That sounds right, Kathleen Kennedy.
Kathleen Kennedy, was that his sister?
Do you want to hear about how his brother also fought in World War II and how he died?
Yeah, you do that while I'm trying to.
So, his older brother, who was Joseph Jr., he died during the Operation Aphrodite. Joe volunteered. Joe volunteered for this mission, flying a Navy B-17 with explosives towards German missile silos on the French coast. If you're wondering why this was a really shitty, why this was such a bad mission, was they were very prepared.
For bomb. Well, yeah, the Germans would have, anticipated something.
Yeah, so it was to use Boeing B-17 Flying Fortress and consolidated PB-4Y bombers against precision-guided munitions against bunkers and other hardened reinforced enemy facilities. The mission was not generally successful, and the intended targets in Europe were either overrun by ground advances of Allied troops or by conventional attacks by aircraft.
Yep.
It was not a good time.
Were there any?
No, but if I remember correctly, not 100%, pretty sure he got shot down over the ocean.
That was, which brother was that?
Joe, his oldest.
No.
Or not his oldest.
His.
He was the junior, so I would assume he's the oldest.
Yeah, his bomber blew up over the English Channel.
Yeah.
So, fortunately, no sharks in the English Channel, but it's almost freezing water, and it's near England.
Which might kill you itself.
Yeah. So to get a little bit into his father and what, even more than him, his father was a piece of shit. His father.
Oh yeah, disclaimer here. We might talk a little bit of shit about JFK in this.
Oh right, I can do my disclaimer now. At no point in this podcast am I going to be in any way like JFK's a great guy. He's a cool guy. He had civil rights and that was about it. Like even
he
Cuba,
didn't go
he
about getting
fucked up
civil
there.
rights correctly, though. We'll get into that when we get to his presidency.
Yes.
He did not go about things correctly.
So his father worked his way up, earned his fortune in Boston. His father was one of those, you are American, you're not Irish. If I hear you talking about being Irish, I'm gonna smack you. This was wild because later in life, him and I was right, his sister Kathleen would like go over to England. His sister married some English colonel, I don't know. And they very much bought into the aristocracy. And so to me, the concept of American aristocracy makes me very angry because there is no aristocracy. There's rich people. There's obscenely rich people, Jeff Bezos, and then there's everyone else. There's poor. There's everyone. There is no royalty. There is no aristocracy. You may have money, but you're not better. You're not different. And the entire idea of JFK is, I'm rich, I'm better, and that rubs me incredibly the wrong way.
What would it take to rub you the right way?
Hand on cock.
All right.
I'm down for this.
Music slowly fades in.
God damn it. Another thing was their sister Rose Marie Kennedy, who was born with a lot of developmental issues. I think there is some schizophrenia. There was a lot of bipolar, and her father had her lobotomized at 23. So
I'm sure that went well.
Oh yeah, and then they locked her away for the next however many years she was alive. Well, she died at 86, so it was a long time.
Oh God.
Yeah. And she was lobotomized at 23.
Oh no.
Yeah. She died in
That's
2005.
63 years.
Yeah, she died in 2005.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
JFK had a lot of fucking medical issues too.
A lot of that resulted from PT, from the PT boat going down, and Army injuries. Not
His
Army, Navy.
digestive issues and stuff. His special diet
I forgot about that. Yeah,
that
but
he did the opposite of.
his back was.
Oh, yeah, his
fucked.
back was fucked from
Yeah.
the PT. Yeah.
But so she was lobotomized, and they just kind of did that whole rich people thing and put her away and like put her in a home for the next 63 years.
Yeah, it didn't happen.
Yep.
No pictures of proof.
Like there are very few pictures of Rosemary Kennedy.
Are you saying Rose Marie or Rosemary?
Rosemary.
Okay, I was like, because I know people named Rosemary.
Yeah.
So...
It's Rose Space Marie. All of them have 3 names, and the 3 name. Well, I guess there's Patricia Kennedy. That's the only one.
Don't we all have 3 names though?
Yeah, but you don't say
not
Nicholas.
always.
Yeah, but I'm not out here going by Nicholas George.
Yeah.
You should. We'll do it.
No.
No,
please.
no, that's your name now. We won't yell Nico now. We're gonna yell Nicholas George.
I don't know which is worse.
Honestly, that sounds like you should be a war general. Nicholas George. Granted, it also sounds like you would be fighting for the wrong side. Fucking Confederate.
Not really.
Here, Nicholas George.
Oh, okay.
Okay, that side. Okay,
You gotta choose the war, my guy.
Yeah, you can't just throw that one out. All right, so that just to lay the groundwork for how his father liked to run things. And then his father also during the war advocated for isolationism, kind of because he didn't really agree with the killing of the Jews, but he did agree that the Jews were a kind of a problem.
How so? How were the Jews a problem?
I don't think there's many details on how his father saw
Yeah.
the Jews.
All right.
I think it was just more
Just
like
curious.
Well, I mean, it's the standard line of European anti-Semitism of the Jews have the money, therefore the Jews are the problems or are the reason we don't have money.
Yeah,
it's that standard line of anti-Semitism.
That's branched back like millennia.
Yeah. It's in my brain hole. It's in my brain hole. It's in my brain hole. I can't remember. It's completely gone. That thought's gone. It's left. That thought is completely left.
That was the wildest thing ever. I thought your appendix just exploded or something.
No. I was trying to figure out.
We were watching the downfall of Nick's mental capacity. Like
it was. My thought was there, and then it's just.
Never mind. You're just middle of talking. Stop. It's in my brain hole. It's in my brain hole. It's in my brain hole. Like.
It wasn't fun as I could not remember what the fuck my thought was. I
hated every second of the downfall. The random just facial expression you made to breaking down mentally was just wild.
I mean, it was funny to watch, but not fun to experience.
So what else? I mean, that's really it. From his father, rich guy who basically bought his son's political career. Are we gonna get to it when we do his presidency of how his dad bought off the mafia to get him in? We'll get there for that. Yeah.
We'll get there.
His so this is back in the day where the union was essentially the mob.
Yeah.
Like the team.
A lot of their ideals coincide.
Yeah, if you've ever watched The Irishman, that good fun movie. 5-hour movie.
Yeah, good movie. Way too fun. Oh, I mean, not way too long, but it's
so long.
It is a chore to get through.
I've never watched it.
It's good.
Remember the second episode of the podcast when we said we were trying to it? Yeah,
and then Nick and I did, and then you failed us.
No, I think neither of us did by the time we wanted to talk about it, and then we just never talked about it again.
We'll give you our Irishman review one day.
The last episode we ever released.
We're all about those long promises.
Yeah.
A long con. Kind of like JFK.
So another thing. The Kennedys were Catholic.
Oh, very much so.
Yeah.
Some would say very devout.
So we now get to have this fun thing where this is where Adam's gonna call me Catholic Light. And when it comes to this, kinda. So a lot of Yes, they were
Nick's only
very
Catholic in all the wrong ways. Like he touches children. No, he doesn't
Oh,
do that.
I do not.
No,
don't.
he
No,
doesn't.
I do not. I do not. No, no.
Oh, Adam's getting spicy.
So
Wild.
dial it down. You're at a solid habanero. Bring that shit down to like a serrano. So they were Catholic, and at this time there was massive anti-Catholic prejudice, which really has not gone away until like the 80s, really. And then it,
And
kind
it's
of
coming back.
Yeah, I know. I'm
All right.
well aware. Hi, thanks. I am one. But this time that prejudice was more Catholics are in before the 50s, before the Kennedys, the prejudice was Catholics are Italians, they're Irish, they're Polish,
the Europeans.
No, they're the trash Europeans. They're not WASPs.
Oh yeah,
American quote unquote
like
aristocracy was
like
typically WASP.
European.
Okay, so
Not
do you guys,
impoverished. I don't know how to say it.
I'm gonna explain what WASP is. WASP is white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. When people think of the American quote unquote American aristocracy, it is typically WASP.
Okay.
Especially East Coast, down south.
Boston, yes, the Baptists, the Catholics of the South.
Boston is a little weird because Boston's very Irish, so that's where you get that rare Catholic aristocracy. And because of that, a lot of the Catholic prejudice was, you aren't a WASP, you are Irish, you are Polish, you are Italian, you're not a WASP, and because of that, you're thought of kind of lesser. Not so much the Italians, but like especially the Irish and the Polish were definitely thought of like a lower class European. And then as time moved on, it became more, well, at the very beginning of the founding, and then as time moved on, it switched back to it was, you're Catholic, you are a loyal follower of the Pope, and if the Pope asks you to try and overthrow your country, you're going to do it because the Pope told you to. It's a complete misunderstanding of what Catholic dogma is and the infallibility of the Pope.
It's also that's kind of exactly how the Crusades happen. Is everyone follows the word of the Pope.
Okay, cool.
Can declare holy war.
This isn't the 1300s.
It's actually no, wrong. Literally 1000. It's when 1095 or 1092. It's when the first crusade happened.
Yeah, Nick.
All right, there was one in the 1300s.
Yeah, they happened a lot.
They don't happen anymore. All right. They haven't
Yet.
happened in like 500 years.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No one wants to die for God anymore.
Because of that comes from a misunderstanding of the infallibility of the Pope, where if what the Pope says you must do and you must believe. I don't really believe in that at all, but technically, if you really look at it, the dogma is that whenever the Pope speaks about faith, then that is the law. That's really his early life, and then eventually his father buys him the fucking presidency. No, I shouldn't say that flat out.
No. His father buys him the presidency.
Also, you have to realize in this time period how much people loved war heroes for politicians.
Yeah.
This is also back when everyone knew that the politicians and the mafia were working together, but no one would admit it. Nowadays, we just know, and everyone is blatantly obvious about it.
The thing about it is JFK ran on the front of that wasn't how he was. He ran on the set that he had a moral compass and it was skewed correctly.
I don't think JFK knew that his dad was doing this though. I think I thought it was just his dad did it, and JFK was saying that he wasn't doing any of this, and on JFK's terms, he wasn't.
I don't fully believe the mafia view at all.
So the major electoral trend of JFK's election that wasn't just blatant corruption, was you had Dwight Eisenhower, who was president for 2 terms. I believe.
Yes.
2 terms.
FDR is the only one that's been more than 2.
Okay, well, there have been several that have led 1.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were saying maybe he had
No.
3, and I was like, no.
No, Eisenhower is, because I remember in the book, we'll get into what I want to bring up with Eisenhower and JFK. But yes, he states that he was a 2-term president.
Yeah. So Eisenhower, he was a Republican war hero. He was Ike. He led the country into freeing Europe from the Nazis. He led that, and that got him elected.
Hey kids, you ever hear the term "I like Ike"?
Yep. This is the weird trend of like 6 presidents having 3-letter names.
Who are the other ones?
You had Ike, you had JFK,
FDR and JFK.
FDR, Ike, JFK, LBJ.
Yep.
Nice.
Yeah. And then what? Nixon was after.
Nixon was after JFK.
Yeah. So there wasn't really one for Nixon
for a small amount of time.
Dick? No.
Yeah. Before Nixon fucked up real hard there. Maybe we'll get into that one day.
Yeah, that's cool. So the electoral trend was you had Ike, Republican war hero. You had and then when his term was up, the campaign was Nixon versus JFK, and Nixon was running off of Eisenhower's coattails, and he was trying to be I'm just like Eisenhower, I'm just like Ike, I am strong, I'm a war vet, everything like that. But at that point, the American public was really like kind of done with the war. We're like, all right, we won, we fixed Europe the best we can, let's get the fuck out, let's focus on back home. Let's get equal rights.
It's focused back home, but it's also we are in an arms race.
Yeah. So
just random question here. Are women allowed to vote yet?
Yeah.
Okay.
Women's suffrage was a thing in like the 20s.
Yeah.
Okay. I just couldn't remember
civil rights
exactly
was the 60s.
when that happened.
Well, civil rights was JFK.
Yeah. So then you had pro strength, I'm just like Nixon, and then you had JFK, who was, hey, yes, there's problems over there. Yes, those are problems that we should probably address, but also let's look back here real quick and try and fix our shit. And then that was minus with the help of heavy corruption, he got elected.
JFK, it just sucks because like with me going into doing research for this, it seemed like JFK was like a good president, like a good guy. And like I do think at the end of the day, I do think JFK was like a decent human being. I just think that with the route he went with his life, he chose every wrong decision to get the things he needed. And don't get me wrong, I will say for civil rights to come through, what he did, kind of acceptable.
I'd argue that he wasn't even a good person, just in general.
Yeah, well, he was horrible to his wife, but I mean, what he got through and what he saw needed, and like what this nation needed, and what he got done in the short amount of time, I think was pretty good. And also, there is the argument of the Cold War would have ended sooner if JFK would have never been assassinated. He might not have got it reelected, but there was the thought of if he got that test ban treaty done, the Cold War would have ended way sooner than it actually did.
You might not have had the really shitty LBJ policies. Minus, when I say shitty policies, I mean everything outside of civil rights. Civil rights, good.
Also, sorry for everyone who doesn't.
Shitty.
Sorry for everyone who doesn't like political bullshit in their podcast, and that's why they come here. We're really trying to jump around the political bullshit, but I mean, this is a president being assassinated that we kind of have to hit on some stuff. We now have JFK's presidency, which is built around him wanting to get.
That's the conspiracy.
Didn't
JFK was never a president.
No.
JFK never existed.
We have JFK's presidency, which was built mostly on the civil rights movement. That was the big thing he was trying to push. And within the the book I read was The Last 100 Days. Within the last 100 days is when he made the huge push for it. It was after his newest born son died after being born from difficulties, because it was Patrick was a premature baby. And the civil rights movement, this is where Eisenhower comes back in. Eisenhower basically wrote, JFK needed to get the Senate to do the 2/3 majority to be able to pass what he wants to pass. He is trying to pass not only the Civil Rights Act, but he's also trying to pass the testing ban treaty, which means there is going to be no more nuclear testing underwater, in space, or in air, or in the atmosphere. So it all has to happen on like ground, actually, but no one wants to do that because everyone knows the repercussions of nuclear radiation at this point.
Of the fun stuff.
Yeah, the not great part of testing your nukes on your own soil. So he's trying to get that passed. So now he has to decide, because the Senate is basically against both. Like, he's not going to get 2/3 majority for either. And he has to find out which one he wants to get passed. And Eisenhower has someone who is being charged with like tax fraud, basically. And he gives a blank check to JFK saying, if you can get him off of his charges, I will publicly back whatever you say. And then there's also another person that's along with Eisenhower that has like basically the same thing. And JFK gets the guy away with no charges. And JFK signs both those blank checks to be able to get certain senators on his side and have Eisenhower personally back him, because everyone loves Eisenhower. He was there for 2 terms. Everyone loved him.
One of the more underrated presidents.
Yeah. So he knew that whatever he said the general public would also probably back it at this point. And the thing he chose was the Civil Rights Act. Hence why the Cold War went on for so much fucking longer. But there's also the time of, in the Rose Garden is where JFK would talk to people like in private, because he had things bugged throughout the White House, because he wanted to know what people were saying when. Wild. He had it bugged so he could listen to it at any time to find out what's going on. And he would take people that he wanted to actually talk to in private out to the Rose Garden. And he brought Martin Luther King Jr. out there to talk to him about the Civil Rights Act and tell him that the government believed that telling him that 2 of his close colleagues are thought to be communist agents, which is, at this point in time, a big fucking no-no in the US. Communism, big bad. Which is why when we get to Lee Harvey Oswald, it's amazing he got as far as he fucking did, and it's really fucking mind-numbing that we allowed it to happen. Because I am a believer that there is no conspiracy. Lee Harvey Oswald did this start to finish, and it should have been fucking obvious from the second he was like 5 years old. But we'll get to that in the conspiracies episode. So yeah, he basically paid to be able to get the 2/3 majority. And Martin Luther King isn't the only person he ever talked to in the Rose Garden. There were multiple, like the Eisenhower conversation happened in the Rose Garden. The Rose Garden was his go-to to do all this. And the big thing about him in his campaign was that his moral compass is aligned. But the more he realized that he had to get things done and push through, he realized how much being in his position, he had to take his moral compass and skew it, which really, JFK did a lot of bad things, but like in the name of the right way, like trying to get the right thing done, but doing it wrong. Like literally the definition of chaotic good. Like in the long run, the thing
Best
that needs to be done will be
intentions.
done. Yeah, best intention, but all of the wrong ways getting to the final result is how I see it. Except for the fact that he did cheat on his wife all the time and treated her like absolute fucking garbage. That was the thing he did. And I can't defend that in any way, shape, or form. he cheated on his wife. Everyone knows it. He cheated on his wife all the time, and one of those people was Marilyn Monroe. Like,
Which I mean, like, I can't be mad at Marilyn Monroe.
I mean, yeah, but
not at the person.
There's also
I
a
can't
thing
be
in the
mad
book,
at, like the whole.
There's also a thing in the book I was reading. He would invite like certain like journalists back to the White House to the White House pool because there's a fucking pool there. Because why not? He always had it set to a very specific temperature because of his back problems. So JFK was on like this very strict regimen of like what he ate and what workouts he did and when throughout the day because of his injuries from the war and just his medical problems. That he would like, he had the pool set to a certain temperature. He would swim a certain amount every single day, no matter what. And then he always wore a back brace. The journalists that he would like bring back to the White House and like when he would swim, JFK was a very in shape man. Everyone mentioned that his like legs were very toned and he had a very like almost ripped upper body because all he did was swim every fucking day because he never stopped that from after the war. Like he never stopped with that because it was the only thing that kind of relieved pressure from his back, which makes sense. In water you float and you kind of lets things elongate and decompress, and your dick gets longer from elongating because there's a journalist that's hot.
Also, JFK was a good-looking guy to begin with, so
yeah. And I will say,
and a man, like a good-looking man
his,
in power, like
good-looking man in power. And there's something about his voice that just seems powerful, like the way he talks and like enunciates and the words he chooses. Just it's like it wraps it all together. It's like, oh, okay. JFK is known for giving some of the best speeches as like a president.
Literally not where I thought that sentence was going to go, but okay.
No, we're not going sexual with the JFK. He's known for giving a lot of like really good speeches. Most people think he was like one of the most charismatic like presidents, which is like somewhat true, except for the fact that all of his, I don't know, everything was skewed. He did stop the Cuban Missile Crisis, basically. He somehow they figured it out soon enough. Like once they realized that Russia was sending missiles to Cuba, and he immediately sent the Navy down there to surround Cuba and be like, yeah, no, you fucking launch it. Like we will obliterate your tiny island into nothingness by the time a missile hits us. So he did have a tough task when he took over office, like taking over the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, everything. It was a big word, monstrumental task. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Monstrumental is a word.
Yeah, monstrumental task. Yeah, there we go. Hey, Nick, explain the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962.
In as few words as possible.
Debatable. Summed up, but not
big missile, go boom.
So in
the X-Men
in 1919, the Russians had a revolution against the Bolsheviks. I'm very sad that got absolutely nothing. So
I got it, but I don't care enough.
So in 1961, U.S. biplanes saw that the Soviets that the Cubans were suddenly getting like built up military infrastructure, and they're like, huh, that's odd. And then
weird, because your entire country hates you.
Enter the SI-71 Blackbird that's able to take better pictures at higher altitudes and all that shit. And they get really clear shots that the Cubans are building missile sites. Not ICBMs, but ballistic missiles. That works. So basically they'd be able to long ship fucking nuke at Florida and it'd be there in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
They were able to bomb, they would be able to nuke like all the way out to like Denver, basically. And have the missiles be there in like an hour at the latest. Shockingly, the United States doesn't like having nuclear weapons pointed at them in their literal
especially
backyard.
By Fidel Castro, of all people.
Yeah. Say what you will about Fidel Castro. There's a lot to be said. Real big piece of shit. Anyone who think Che Guevara is a hero is a fucking moron. But anyway,
basically, to sum it up, U.S. then sent a large majority of Navy ships to Cuba and surrounded it and was like,
and also like a year before, there was also the Bay of Pigs, which was a fucking shit fest, which is where
real bad time. That's
yeah.
a whole like CIA operation that went.
It's
fucking
one of the
south.
it's one of the biggest, it's one of the worst failed CIA ops of all time.
Yeah.
Basically the CIA tried to,
which we'll get into more throughout this little 3-part series. CIA fucks up a lot.
CIA is not good. CIA has never been good. Basically the Bay of Pigs was the CIA tried to have a bunch of former Cuban expats go back and wage war against Castro, and they were relying on US like airstrikes and Navy bombardments that never fucking came, so they just ended up getting bodied.
Bad time.
It's a real bad time. So that was fun. Then there's Cuban Missile Crisis. Basically, who is the Soviet leader at the time? Khrushchev, I think it was Khrushchev. But basically it was a massive pissing match between the Soviets and the US that resulted in a real shit time and basically a near permanent embargo on Cuba up until like 2009, I think. Whenever Obama lifted it, he lifted it, I think, in his second term.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
no, it would have been second term. He was president from 08 till
2015. I don't remember.
2016.
I don't remember.
I think 09 sounds right. I feel like it was one of the first things he did.
Was it? Okay. But he lifted the embargo, which allowed
sale of goods from Cuba.
Commerce. Because Castro died. Granted, Raul's also a major piece of shit. Castro's just not good people. So yeah, that's the Cuban Missile Crisis in a fucking 2-point bullet point that doesn't make any sense.
I mean, basically, JFK was just like, we send army, or we send Navy surround Cuba. Cuba get blown up of missile launches from there.
And so another thing to point out is that this was in response to the U.S. putting nuclear missiles in Turkey, which is a hop, skip, and stretch away from Russia. So
we could have hit
we did it first.
all of Russia. Yeah, we could have literally hit all of Russia.
You know,
the reason JFK was so into banning the testing, though, was he learned that testing even in space would cause an issue for future generations here, and he was so against that. He was like, we got to stop testing in the space and in the air and underwater.
I like that. That's a real hard. I like it.
That's what it was. He literally learned from, I'm pretty sure I have it written down here somewhere, that the reason he did it was because of that exact.
So there's a very interesting poll that's like, if you poll Americans, JFK is routinely like in the top 10, top 5 of presidents.
Yeah.
When you actually look at his presidency, he really didn't do shit.
Yeah. Outside of civil rights.
I think because at this point, when you talk about JFK's presidency, you really only talk about what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And the end result was always good.
Yeah. It was never how he got to the end result, and that he never lived.
He never finished a term, so everything that he wanted to do is what we look at, not what he was actually doing.
So Lee Harvey Oswald, aka the man who should have been seen doing this way before it ever fucking happened. Should have been stopped, should have been seen, and was seen, actually. As we get into the conspiracies later, I will, in the next episode, if it gets brought up, I will explain how the reason that the CIA and like FBI never knew him or anything is because they wiped the records of it, because they did interview him multiple times and they said, he's just defecting back from Russia. He's fine.
11/22/63 gets into this.
It's wild when you think about the fact that he was also a U.S. Marine.
Let me tell you. No, let me tell you what I learned.
We will be getting into that very soon. I have 7 pages, my boys.
Let me tell you what I learned about Lee Harvey Oswald from Hamilton. So,
wrong podcast.
Yeah, that's jury of drunken opinion. You have 2 weeks. Lee Harvey Oswald, his mother, super fucking controlling. To him and his older brothers. His dad died 2 months before his birth, so he basically was just raised by his mother and a couple guys that kind of came in and out of his life. At one point, she put all the kids into an orphanage because she couldn't take care of them, as if it was just like a drop-off daycare. But she kept Lee. No, actually, surprisingly not.
I have to go pick up some children.
Oh. I have things I have to pay for.
That was a yoke, people.
Yeah, that sounded bad. Yeah. But she didn't want to put Lee into the orphanage because he was still too young. So he was sent between her sister and some other housekeepers and babysitters during that time. So the day after Christmas in 1943, she finally put Lee into the orphanage as well. And this orphanage had over 100 kids. Lee was always described as being different and kind of sheltered. What were you saying?
I was going to say, so they were well looked after.
Yes, as orphanages in the 1940s go, yeah, pretty fucking great. I can only assume it was probably Catholic in some way, shape, or form.
All right. I feel like that was uncalled for.
Was it?
Well, we did know that's actually why Lee Harvey actually killed JFK, was because he was raised by a Catholic orphanage and JFK was Catholic. You heard it here first. This is the root of all evil.
Okay. So in 1944, she took them all out and relocated to Dallas because she met a man named Edwin Ekdahl. Lee found Edwin as to be a very good friend, and they believe he saw him as, like, his family thought that Lee saw him as the dad that he never had because his dad died before he was born. They got along really well. The only thing is that his mom's an absolute controlling piece of shit and kind of really ruined it. So eventually that man leaves.
Big oof.
Also, Lee skipped school often. This is a thing that never stops throughout his life. So with him skipping school often, he got held back in like first grade, which made him then always a year older in school. He was always at this point in life bigger than everyone else, so he had like a little power trump over everyone. But we'll get into later, Lee Harvey Oswald was a very small fucking guy. He was like 5'9", 165 pounds, very small guy. He lost that power pretty quick. So Edwin eventually divorces Lee's mom, and they go back into their like whole being impoverished and everything because his mom's a lazy piece of shit that's controlling all of them. He also had a very hard time making friends, like really hard. Like he just couldn't almost.
I'm still here with you.
Fun fact, during this time, because why the fuck not? He learned tap dancing because his mom pretty much controlled him and babied him into doing it. Wasn't allowed to play sports, was allowed to fucking become a tap dancer, though.
Interesting.
Yeah. Real power move there. There was a time where Lee chased one of his brothers with a butcher knife, threw it, and missed. His mom played it off as something normal and it happened all the time. So I don't know if you guys see that kind of as like a little flash there in the childhood of, oh, maybe this man's violent and might do something really stupid later in life. He does. So in high school, he ends up missing 47 of 60 days of school and has a truancy trial. But his mom didn't take him to it. So
they had trials for truancy?
Yeah. Yeah, missing school was a big thing back then.
Wild.
Yeah. Lee told his caseworker that he felt that his mother never gave a damn about him and that he also prefers to not deal with people, hence why he would never go to school. A psychiatrist named Renatus, I don't remember his fucking how to pronounce his name. We're going to call him Hartogs. His last name is Hartogs. So psychiatrist named Dr. Hartogs stated that after having him because of the truancy, he found Lee to have definite traits of dangerousness and showed a cold, detached attitude. This is while he's still in school. Explain to me how this man was never seen about to do what he's going to do.
Because mental health wasn't a thing in the 50s.
Yeah,
Mental health wasn't a thing until like the 2000s.
Fair.
Debatable.
2010s?
Yeah, maybe.
5 years ago.
He also confessed to him that he had hit his mom. And then after this trial, he ended up getting a probation officer. Oswald refused to stand for the pledge or participate. A little more hint, because as we'll get to, Harvey Oswald was a hardcore fucking Marxist and hated everything about the U.S.
Yep.
Except for the fact that he could live here.
Well, how that one works.
Yeah. His mom, Margaret, was why people think Lee isn't getting better with all the resources he had at his disposal, because she refused to allow him to. In 1953, a judge put him into a home to get more help. Didn't fucking help. There was a time that Lee went fishing with some other kids, and he fished alone from everyone else. And every fish he caught, instead of putting them back, he just, no matter the size, left them on the ground. And when they were done, he just left them on the ground to die. He never put them back into the water. Just left them there to die, suffocating.
Wild.
So Vobel was someone that he met at school, and Lee told him about a plan to steal a Smith & Wesson from a store. He then showed up with a glass cutter. Vobel told him that there's literally a line through the glass that if he cut it, it would fucking sound an alarm. The police would be there within seconds. And Lee was like, oh, whatever, and just abandoned his plan to steal this Smith & Wesson from a fucking gun shop. And then he becomes another friend. Another one of his friends is William Woff. One day, Lee was reading some books from William Woff's dad's library and went on a rant about communism, saying it was the only life for the worker and that he was looking for a communist sect in the area. They started to argue, and then Woff's father politely asked Oswald to leave his house because he's a good American who hates communism. Was it actually polite? No one knows, but I'm going to assume probably fucking not.
We asked them politely but firmly to leave.
Without the politely part.
Get the fuck out.
So at this point, Oswald is 16. He asked his mom to lie about his age so he can enlist in the Marines, and she agreed to. At this point, Oswald wants to join the military, and most people speculated it's because that's how his brothers got away from the controllingness of their mother. They just joined the military and fucking left. So this is kind of the only way he could think of getting away from her. So she agrees. He got rejected because he's underage, because the Marines, as much as we make fun of being for absolutely fucking stupid pieces of dumb fucks, aren't actually stupid. They realized he was underage. Yeah. So he spent time until 17 studying the handbook and memorizing it. So by the time he could join, he was fucking, there's no way they could deny him. So Lee met Palmer McBride, and at one time while hanging out with McBride, said that he thought Eisenhower was doing a pretty good job, and Lee replied, if he had the opportunity, he would kill Eisenhower.
Eisenhower was notoriously anti-commie.
Yeah. So in 1956, Lee Harvey Oswald joins the Marines. December 21st, 1956, he shot 212, which is 2 points higher than needed to be a sharpshooter for the Marines. If anyone knows anything about the Marines at this point, the Marines are literally the highest scoring marksmen.
Every Marine's a rifleman.
Yeah. The Marines are the best shooters out of all military branches. So he is very, very qualified to shoot rifles. A lot of the Marines that he was with thought he was a closeted homosexual because while in Japan, he visited a transvestite bar, which does kind of point a giant fucking arrow at being homosexual. Then shortly after their time in Japan, they were stationed at Estuguini. I don't know what it is. They're stationed in California, and Lee shot himself with a .22 caliber in the arm because that shit happens.
Was it
actually
what was the reason for it?
Accidental misfiring.
just to get out
Large
of going to
quotes.
Nam.
Yeah, large quotes on.
There's actually a book I read that goes into it's fascinating that if you look at
It would have been Nam. It would have been Korea, right?
yeah, when was it?
It would have been. He joined the Marines in '56.
56. Yeah, it would have been
Yeah,
Korea.
it was Korea because
Yeah.
that's what my grandpa fought in.
Yeah. If you look at wars dating back to the Battle of Waterloo and the Battle of
Adam says bye.
older medieval European battles, you never had soldiers doing self-inflicted wounds. That wasn't until about World War One and a little bit in the Crimean War where you had soldiers beginning to like they'd stick their arm out of the trench, you get shot and be like, all right, I'm done, bye. And you
get honorably discharged, which means you can still pull money from the U.S. military.
Yeah, and you didn't see that in the Battle of Waterloo. You didn't see that in the Battle of
Bull Run.
I mean, Civil War was close enough. Agincourt, there we go. Which was between the French and English before either was a country. So that's a really interesting thing to look at.
So there was a time while they were stationed in the Philippines that a Marine was killed during an accidental shooting while he was on guard. People speculated that Lee did it somehow. And there's not really a lot of proof saying he didn't. But Lee was punished for shooting himself by being promoted all the way down to private. And they think that this is where he had the
How
first
many more
idea
promotions does he need to be an asshole?
I think he needs 3 now.
He had enough.
Yeah, I think he needs 3 now.
He had enough to be an asshole, and then he got demoted to private, so he needs 3 again. This is where people think that he got the first idea of defecting to Russia. Like, he was a communist, but this is where he finally decided, oh yeah, the Soviet Union is where I want to fucking live. There is then later a night while on guard duty, Oswald mentally broke and shot his M1 rifle into the air, and by the time officers got there, he was slumped against a tree crying, just mentally fucking broke. Which I can't really blame him for. War is war. Like, not that I don't think he ever actually saw combat though.
But I mean, people like, especially back then, like just being in the military was rough, just boot camp and shit like that. And then if you're mentally unstable, it's a lot.
Yeah. So after this, he was sent to Japan to recoup, quote unquote. And then he came back and he started flaunting his communist ideas to everyone, reading communist books, reading Mein Kampf, nonetheless, while in the military.
That's bold.
It's a fucking bold fucking play, Cotton.
All right.
One operations chief confronted Oswald about his left-wing philosophy and study. Oswald replied he was studying the enemy's ideals as the Marine Corps taught him, and the chief let it go. Because everything was knowing your enemy. So why not read their ideals? And then, but they're actually your ideals. His way of getting out of the military was to apply to a liberal arts college in Sweden and sever ties. This was just one maneuver. He lied on his application. He got accepted. They did not allow him out, by the way. The way he got out of the military is in August, he applied for dependency discharge because a candy jar fell at work and hit his mother in the nose. And doctors couldn't find anything wrong. So his mom just kept trying doctors until one of them agreed with her. And then she sent letters saying that she couldn't take care of herself. 2 weeks later, and on September 9th, 1959, Oswald was transferred. And then September 11th, 1959, he was discharged from the Marines. This is where he finally decides he's defecting to Russia. And that's exactly what he does. He goes to New Orleans and he gets a boat trip to France. He goes from France and he goes to Russia because he thinks the Russians will love him because he agrees with communism and everything. Not how that shit worked at all. The KGB and Soviet Union denied any work with Oswald because he was too mentally unstable, and they never had a relationship with him, but had him under surveillance because he was mentally unstable. This is where a lot of conspiracy theories come in, that he was a KGB agent. Everyone in the KGB that they fucking interview denies having anything to do with Oswald because he was mentally unstable.
You're too crazy for the Soviets.
So he shows up. He wants to get defected. He tells them he wants to defect. They're like, we can give you a 6-day visa to go into Moscow. And that is basically what he gets. The KGB defectors tell the CIA later that there was a mole that was a high-ranking KGB agent. This launched a 20-year manhunt for a phantom mole. That explains, if you want to know what the CIA is doing during the Cold War, it's what I just said explains the entire fucking Cold War for the CIA and their wild shenanigans and them hunting things that weren't there. KGB defectors told CIA that there's a mole within their fucking agency, and the CIA put a 20-year manhunt for this fucking mole that wasn't actually there. So have that in the back of your head for the rest of the time we talk about the CIA in this. So one of the people that dealt with Oswald when he came over to Russia was Nosenko. And he was a KGB agent who dealt with the tourism department, and they gave him a tourism visa. So he dealt with Oswald's name while he was there in Russia. Nosenko defected from the KGB 2 months after the assassination of JFK. He was given the CIA thousands of names, and one of them was Oswald's, but not known at the time what he had to do with anything. They find out Oswald had nothing to do with anything other than he was just on the list because they had him under surveillance because they were like, he's from the US defecting to Russia. He could be an agent, is literally why he was on KGB list. Nosenko literally told them and the Warren Commission that Oswald had nothing to do with the KGB. Nosenko originally was going to defect in 1963, but the Geneva disarmament was canceled twice, which is where the CIA was going to get him free safeguard out to the US, but it got canceled twice because they knew the second that they got everyone they needed, he was going to be killed. The FBI believed that Nosenko, he had to say about Oswald was going to be told to the Warren Commission, but instead it was told to the CIA, and they doubted his credibility. And Nosenko didn't want to testify at first. Also, the CIA then put him and treated him like a prisoner instead of a defector, and the FBI was not allowed to talk to him. So he was literally thrown into a little safe house that they built specifically for him for fucking years. Like a long fucking time. Oswald also has a KGB file for anyone who's wondering. I'm going to kind of fly through the rest of this. This is he ends up staying in Russia on a visa. He kind of lives like a celebrity. He's not allowed to live in Moscow. They kick him out to some city outside of Moscow, and he lives like a celebrity because everyone's like, oh my God, a U.S. citizen is now a defector, blah, blah, blah. And that doesn't last long, and then he gets real mad that it didn't last longer.
When they're like, oh, this dumbass.
He also,
this dumbass isn't cool.
He was denied citizenship after his 6-day visa originally, and he was told to leave Moscow within 2 hours. He tried to kill himself, and they found him. So the KGB was like, well, we don't want Americans thinking that we caused this dude to kill himself or attempt suicide, so we'll allow him to be here, which is why he got to stay. He then started to become lazy. he got an attitude and he complained about not being paid enough. Wild for someone who is a communist to think that.
I think that they're not being paid.
He also realized that the Soviet system was regimented and was not classless. Wild. This is where he became a Marxist, since Russia wasn't how he thought it should be.
Remember, kids, communism's failed every time it's been tried.
So in 1961, he sent a letter to the American embassy in Russia and wanting to return to America. He lied to the embassy about never applying for Soviet citizenship and saying derogatory things about the U.S. He was given back his passport, and he was allowed to come back to the U.S., but he also married a woman right before then, and she somehow also got to come by. That same woman, after the birth of their child, Oswald would drink the extra breast milk his wife produced. Why is that important? Don't know, but it's creepy, and I think that should be known about him.
This is something that has absolutely nothing to do, but I just felt like needed to be said.
So there's a lot of things that happen with. I'm going to just wrap this whole Oswald thing up and prove it to you that this should have been seen a long time coming. He comes back to the U.S. The FBI is on his ass because he's now a defector that is coming back. They interview him twice. After he kills JFK, they wipe that off the record because they're like, we don't want any sign that we actually talked to this man and said he was okay to join the U.S. again and shouldn't be on a list. So when we get into conspiracies, I will be bringing that up a lot. Because the FBI and the CIA wiped him off any fucking, we never talked to this man or had him on surveillance, as they definitely did. And then just he got the waltz over and fucking killed the president. He moves back with his wife. His wife can't speak English, and he refused to allow her to learn. So
oh my God.
He also speaks super broken Russian. And they communicate in the weirdest way that she has picked up on how to, like, what he's saying, but he refuses her to learn English, and there's their whole relationship. She never leaves him through this, which is wild. So it's a lot of him getting jobs, losing jobs, him now becoming more communist, finding people who don't necessarily agree with him, but accept him for just who he is, and then realize later, oh, hey, maybe he had a problem.
Maybe he's stupid.
Which we'll talk about the Warren Commission at one of these points.
Oh God.
Not in this episode, but so they move around. He's trying to find a job that allows him to, he wants to make more money, but he doesn't have a fucking high school education. He defected from the fucking military. Like, he discharged himself from the military. This man doesn't have qualifications. He's trying to find money. He hates that he can't find money. He's becoming more communist and Marxist. He hates everything about the U.S. government except for the fact that he's allowed to live here with his ideas, because he likes that he can live here. He doesn't like how it's ran, though, but he can live here, unlike in Russia, where he wasn't making enough money to live as more than a peasant like everyone else in Russia. Until finally they move back into Dallas, and he buys through the mail the what is it? It is a Carcano Model 38, which is the rifle he ends up killing JFK with. A month before, he gets hired by the Texas School Depository, which, for people who know anything about this assassination, is where the fucking shooting happens.
Yep.
So anyone who's wondering how he got to the 6th floor depository into a corner, because he fucking worked there. So he has a plan throughout where he wants to bury the rifle, bring the rifle, blah, blah, blah. He has a bunch of different fucking ideas of how he wants to do this. And then finally, there's a little bit more that goes into why he wants to kill JFK, other than the fact that he just doesn't like American government. Nick, would you like to wrap up or sum up why he wants to kill the president?
I mean, because he was anti-communist. Like,
He was communist. He's anti-capitalist.
No, I mean, No, I was saying JFK was anti-communist.
Oh yeah,
JFK was anti-communist, and
he really hates what JFK did to Cuba. He is a huge fan of Fidel Castro.
Of course he would be.
So he gets a job with the depository. The day of when it happens, he's coming out to his neighbor who drives him to work or works with him. I can't remember exactly. He is said to be seen carrying a large brown sack bag type thing that he says is about 2.5 feet long. When they actually measure it, it's about 38 inches. The rifle is literally in there. So he's literally carrying the rifle across the street. He is driven to work. He takes the paper bag into work, and before JFK's motorcade, he goes up to the 6th floor where flooring is being redone. So there's not a lot of people up there. He takes this thing of books and crates of books and creates a little sniper's nest with a rest for the gun and everything. He has lines off of where Houston turns into Elm Street at Daley Plaza to have a perfect shot at the president as long as everything goes to plan, which it fucking does. They didn't have Secret Service on the back of the fucking convertible like they thought that should have been. There wasn't as much Secret Service around him as there should have been. So he gets lined up. He sets that up after the workers go to lunch break, because it is perfectly timed that they go to lunch break as the motorcade's coming by. So he sets up, and the motorcade comes by. As they turn from Houston onto Elm, he fires the first shot. It is said that the first shot hits JFK. Or no, the first shot is heard, and everyone thinks it's a motorcycle backfire or a firework going off. Second one hits JFK in the neck. His arms go, and he's grabbing they outstretch and they start grabbing his torso and his neck. And then the third shot, which is said by the governor that was sitting in front of him as he turned, sounded like a baseball bat hitting a grapefruit. And the right side of JFK's head exploded. And at that moment, Jackie tries to get out. No one's really reacted yet at this point. Jackie tries to climb out the back off to the trunk. The car behind them has a Secret Service agent. He reacts immediately to the shot that hits JFK in the head. He jumps out of his car, runs up, pushes Jackie back into the convertible, and pushes her down into the car so that she is out of line of sight. And then he rides on the back of the car the rest of the way as they now floor it away. So Oswald shot 3 shots. He only brought 4 bullets for a 6 bullet clip or magazine clip. Magazine. He leaves all the shells there. So they take off. And at this point, very obvious, there's a shooter. This is where everything kind of gets skewed. We'll talk about it more in the next episode. The acoustics of Daley Plaza makes it wildly difficult for the people on the ground to know where the shots came from unless they were near the depository. But most people say that the shots came from the depository. Some people say it came from a grassy knoll, which is not possible.
Isn't that one of the main things?
Yeah, so people say there was a second shooter at the grassy knoll and that there was a large puff of smoke, and that's why they thought. They did tests with shooting firearms from the grassy knoll. There's no firearm that fucking produces that much smoke for anyone to recognize it as a weapon. There's also a bunch of people. Another huge thing is the amount of people up in the depository that people saw before the shooting and after the shooting, what floor they were on, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, Oswald shoots JFK. They rush off. And within minutes, Oswald has dumped the gun between some crates that no one can see unless you are specifically looking straight down the crates. He is going down. He is encountered by a cop. He runs. The cop gets caught up. And Oswald gets out of the building within 3 minutes and is just gone. He takes a bus. And once the bus gets stopped because of the motorcade. So he requests a transfer. Transfer's not there fast enough. He hops into taxi. Taxi takes him to the next bus stop. He's about to hop on a bus that is supposed to take him from there into Mexico, which was his main getaway plan. This is where JD Tippett pulls up on him because he fits the description of the person, of the shooter that most people have called in. He calls Oswald over. Oswald talks to him through the passenger's window. And then Tippett has a weird feeling. He's like, this just doesn't seem right. So he gets out of the vehicle. He's walking around the front of the vehicle. By the time he hits the passenger side headlight, he doesn't have his gun out. He never radioed this in because he's not super suspicious yet. He just fits the description.
He's a little suspicious.
Yeah. This is where Oswald unloads his .38 revolver into him and kills him instantly. And then Oswald runs, gets into a theater. He doesn't pay for the theater and hides in the theater. They call it in. Within 6 minutes of them calling it in, a dozen plus police officers show up because they heard about Tippett being killed. And that's where they arrest Oswald in the movie theater. One of the officers come up to him, tell him to stand up. And as he's going to arrest him, Oswald pulls out the revolver again and tries to shoot it, but it misfires and doesn't unload. And Oswald just gets his fucking shit wrecked by this cop.
Yeah.
The second he realizes that he just almost got shot, Oswald gets fucking bodied because he's a 5'9", 165-pound man, and just gets absolutely obliterated by this dude. And they arrest him. And they take him to where we'll eventually pick up when we get to Jack Ruby. We'll talk about this part of Lee Harvey Oswald and after his arrest.
Yep.
But that is basically the assassination summed up without going into the conspiracy theories yet, which we'll get into next episode. But that is the basic general consensus of information for the actual assassination. We'll post, I will make sure that on social media when we release this episode, we'll post a picture of I found it on Google. There's the route through Daily Plaza and where it turns and where he got shot. So we'll post that so everyone can have an actual visual of exactly where the depository is, where JFK was when the shot came.
Am I the only one who, when I hear depository, thinks suppository?
No, that's
same. Yeah. Depository is just a weird way of saying things. But yeah, that is part one. Long episode for everyone. Might cut it down. Be about an hour and a half probably, I would assume, after cutting out all this. Long episode, a lot of information that we summed up, and I'm sorry, I wish we could give it justice and give it its 10 to 15 parts to go through all the info, but that is the summary of Lee Harvey Oswald, JFK's early life, and how it got to the point of the assassination and what happens during the assassination without going into the conspiracies, and then Jack Ruby and everything, which we will be getting into. That's 2 whole episodes for those alone. So what do you guys got about this specific part of JFK, Lee Harvey Oswald, and the assassination? Just the facts.
I never knew that much about Lee Harvey Oswald. I knew like the Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
So
there's a lot. It's amazing, especially I highly recommend going and listening to this book about Lee Harvey Oswald. Like, it's called Case Closed, Lee Harvey Oswald and the JFK Assassination. It's a long book on Audible. It's almost like 20-ish hours, somewhere in there. Super good, though. It goes so in depth. The first like 12 chapters, which is like the first 12 hours of the book, are just about Lee Harvey Oswald. I highly recommend this book because it is just him, the author, going through the facts that are given and the information that proves what he is saying is truth compared to what conspiracy theorists say. And it is a very good book, but it shows the light on Lee Harvey Oswald that I don't think our generation knows, which is just Lee Harvey Oswald killed JFK. JFK, great president, one of the top 5 presidents, gets killed by Lee Harvey Oswald, bad guy. No one understands how bad Lee Harvey Oswald was and how predictable it was and how actually not amazing of a president JFK was.
I think like everything you guys are saying, you guys are going to continue to make fun of me for it. 11/22/63, such a good show. And you guys might be like, how is it historically accurate with a time traveler? Because the whole point of the time traveler is he sits there and he watches Lee Harvey Oswald for 25 years or something like that, and just sits and watches him. And so you get all of this.
As long as it's not like Umbrella Academy, where 5 is
No.
actually just trying to stop the assassination or
No.
make sure the assassination of JFK happens.
James Franco is trying to stop the assassination, but because of the conspiracy theories that they have, he has to research Lee Harvey Oswald and follow him around, and kind of do like a spy thing to make sure that he is actually the one who kills JFK. And so it goes into Lee Harvey's whole entire life and stuff like that. And then you see at the end of the show, like what the world would be like if JFK actually lived. And it's a whole big thing that I think you guys would enjoy.
Okay.
Talking to these two and the audience.
All right. So that's part 1 of our 3-part series on the JFK assassination and Lee Harvey Oswald. So if you go into the description of this episode, in the description is our link to all of our socials. You click on our link tree, it'll pop up all of our socials. The top one is our Podbean. If you go to the Podbean, you click on Become a Patron. You can pay $1 a month, and $1 a month gives you the Taskmaster special. It gives you last year's that you can watch, and then you can also watch this year's live, or if you miss it, you can watch it at any time after paying the $1 a month. You can see it for funsies. It also gives you access to our Discord. Be able to communicate with us in a much more easy way, freeing way. We might ban you if you say some really stupid shit, but we'll see if that happens. And then
You can say a lot before we ban you.
Yeah.
probably, yeah. So $3 tier gives you unedited episodes of all of our episodes. So the much longer, drawn out versions where you kind of see where we want to go with each episode, but also the jokes that are not allowed to make it in by our own editorial discrepancies. I don't know words. I'm using big words here. They're probably not right, but so there's that. Rate us, leave us reviews. If they're bad reviews, we'll blast you on social media. It's a thing we do. It's great. We've done it once.
It's funny.
because
It's
was
in
funny,
a funny way, not in like a hate me way.
Debatable.
We
We haven't
accept
gotten
hate.
a bad, we haven't gotten a worse enough review yet.
We
Demolish a man's life.
we want your hate mail. We embrace your hate mail. We live off of your hate mail.
But yeah.
I will personally
Part
frame the first hate letter we receive.
That's part 1. Nick, do your thing. We have more
Do-
parts we have to record.
Nick, do a different thing though.
We
Do
are
the thing.
professionals.
Okay.
All right. Fair
Okay.
enough.
Yeah.